Start your business for the freedom of time. Now you're tired of the hustle and grind. There's gotta be a better way. It's time to listen to Chill and Prosper. Welcome to Chill and Prosper. You're ready to chill and prosper with Denise Duffield-Thomas.
Hey there, friends. It's Denise here, and welcome to an episode of Chill and Prosper where we talk about kids and money. Now, you might not have kids, and I still want you to listen because I think you're going to still get some interesting viewpoints and ideas maybe about your own money mindset, but also you might have other kids in your life that you can still influence. You might be the rich auntie or a rich gunkle or, whatever. But I haven't done an episode like this for a while about kids and money. So I think it's an important one because it's definitely been on my mind recently. Okay. So I always tell people straight off the bat, like, I am absolutely going to give my kids money blocks. Being someone who talks about money for a living, writes books about money, I am definitely not perfect when it comes to this. For my kids, I will give them different money blocks. I'll give them some probably the same and some different from my family that gave them to me, but I'm not going to be perfect. So don't get schadenfreude in like 20 years time if you hear what my kids have done something bad and go, ha ha. I'm like, no, I will do it as well. Like we all will. All right. So I get variations of questions around this, around kids of money, and things like, what do I say to kids if I can't afford something? How do I raise them with a good positive mindset about money? How do we raise them to be like not entitled rich kids? How do I give my kids what I didn't have? All of those things. They're such important questions. But I really think it comes back down to this idea of like nature nurture when it comes to money. Right? This nature nurture debate. And I love talking about this because I've got two very different money mindset programs, right? That very much look at that nature nurture. So I have my Money Bootcamp, which we're really looking at our experiences around money, our beliefs and where they've come from. So I would say that is that nurture kind of side of it. What have we learned from other people? What are our experiences from our family? What have we learned from the culture that we grew up in, and all of those things about money and how to undo those beliefs. But I also have a program that I'm a certified sacred money archetypes practitioner, whatever you call it. And I've got a program called SMA for Business. And we talk about money personalities. And this is very much nature. This is how you are around money. That hasn't got anything to do with your family, because you could have people raised in the exact same household and they have very different beliefs about money, very different viewpoints, very different behaviors. And it is because of that nature nurture thing, right? And so I find this fascinating because even with my kids, I know they have three very different personalities. And I suspect their money mindset will be different based on that, regardless of what Mark and I teach them. And we're not sitting down like doing money boot camp for our kids and telling them like, write down your list of things to do. But you'll be surprised how much they hear, and without you even noticing, and just things that they take on around money that you won't even be aware of. So it always starts with you. It always starts with you. If you want to influence kids in your life around money, it starts with how you talk about money, how you talk about yourself and your goals and dreams as well, though, because I noticed, like, when I go away for a talk or a retreat or something like that, I never like apologize for it. And I'm so sorry. I feel so guilty for going away. But also I don't like, oh, let me fix the freezer for my husband, like make sure everything's okay. Like, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to my thing. It's gonna be really like fun. I'll tell them what I'm going to do. And I noticed that they don't really get a lot of separation anxiety about that because they're used to me having my work. And actually, even when they were really young and I just go into my office, I never had experiences where they were like banging on the door crying, like, Mom, because they were just like, oh, Mum's going to work, Mum's doing the thing. And I've been very intentional about talking about my work in a way that like isn't apologetic, isn't going, oh, I'm so like sorry for this, and motherhood is my reason for being, and this business is just some shitty thing. Like, I talk about how much I love my business and what I do as much as possible. Although for a couple of years, Willow thought my course was called Mummy Bootcamp, like for mummies, not for like money. And so she's like, Mummy's boot camp. And anyway, what was really funny though, I remember when George was like 5, he just like looked at me one day and he goes, daddies can be leaders too, right? And I was like, yeah, of course they can, bud. And he was just like, yeah, but daddies can also like be in business. And I was like, yeah. And I think it's just because he hadn't gone to school yet and he was growing up in a house where like even though Mark and I work in the business together, I am clearly the CEO. And like we've had discussions where I've gone, well, buck stops with me. My decision's final. Like we're going to do it like this. And so I think they saw that without even us like knowing. And he just got in his minds, oh, like well, mummies are in charge of business, So it was cool because yeah, obviously he's going to go into the world and see patriarchy doesn't always work that way. But I thought it was interesting, right? And interesting now that they're growing older and they're so much more aware of money because I was careful about it in the early years where I was like, not saying money's dirty and things like that. Like I would say, hey, we take care of money in our family. Don't put money in your mouth. I didn't want them to have that scary jolt that so many of us had of like, oh my God, I've done something wrong. Money's so dirty. But also just the way we try and talk about money tries to be very neutral. I don't want them to hear like, oh, we can't afford that, or, money's really tight and we're going to be homeless on the street. Sometimes families say things like that. That's not necessarily true, but it's just the way they talk about money can be like quite jarring, I find. And, as someone who coaches people around money, I hear the aftermath of that. I hear the aftermath of people saying money's evil, money's dirty, money doesn't grow on trees, like rich people are horrible. I see the aftermath of that, of people going, I can't send out my invoice because my grandma told me that it's really impolite to talk about money. Like I can't chase up that person because like it's really rude to ask for money. And like it's not polite. And like that's not what we do in our family. We're poor and we're proud of it. And I mean, this is the sort of stuff we dig into in Money Bootcamp. So if you're not in that, make sure you come and join us. And actually, if that's something that's been on your mind, just go to denisedt.com/bootcamp. Have a look, see if it's the right time for you, see what our monthly call is this month, and just come and join us because this is the stuff that we unwind, right? Is being really clear on what we heard as a kid and not repeating that to our kids. Not repeating that and not giving them the same blocks that we have. And the only way you can do that is for you to explore them yourself, right? Explore how you talk about work and rich people or poor people, depending on where you were, how you talk about like what you spend money on, how you speak about different careers and can you make money from being a creative artist. And I know that because I've been very careful about that, like Willow's just like, oh yeah, I'll be an artist. And actually, remember when she was little, we were at a department store and I was like, oh, let's go see if my book's here. And so I was like, oh, there's my book. And then I was like, oh, I know that person. I some of these authors I've met once, but I'm like, they're my friends. Or I follow them on Instagram. Oh, that's my friend's book. And she's just like, oh, cool. Well, I guess just people have books. And so we went to the checkout and she was like, oh, can you tell them about my book? Because she writes little books all the time. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, can they sell my book here too? And I'm like, oh, and then of course I was like, oh yes, we can do this together. We can like make books and I can get it self-published. And she was like, oh no, I'm not going to do multiple books. I just want to sell them this one like 5-page piece of paper. And I was like, good for you. That's great. I'm glad that you feel that way. And so thinking about all of those ways that you talk about money is really important. And you might have a spouse that you need to have a conversation with and say, look, we don't want to give our kids all these blocks. We don't want to make them feel like nothing's possible. But this is what I want to talk about after the break. How do you avoid, though, the opposite? Having kids that are entitled and like think that you should do everything for them or think money does grow on trees. What's that fine line between being sensible and doing all the grown-up things that you need to do about money and raising kids with a healthy money mindset? It's a tricky conversation. I'm still dealing with it too and figuring it out, but let's talk about it after this quick break. See you in a sec.
It's your time and you're ready for the next step. It's your time and you're ready for the next step. It's your time and you're totally ready for the next step. So many times we are waiting for the perfect moment, for all of the green lights, or for someone else to tap us on the shoulder and say, you're ready. But it has to come from inside you, and you can declare yourself ready now. Put your hand on your heart and try it with me. It's my time and I'm ready for the next step. If you know deep in your heart, even if you're scared, that you're ready to let go of some of your money fears and finally profit from your skills and talents, it's time to get to work. Your next step is to come and join us in Money Bootcamp. You can work with me as your money mindset mentor and join our beautiful community so you can really give yourself permission to make money and change the world. Click below to find out more, but don't wait any longer. Come and join us today. We're ready for you and it's your time and you're ready for the next step.
Okay, welcome back. We're talking about raising rich kids and dealing with kids' money mindset stuff, right? Of course, we want our kids to think anything's possible. We want them to believe in themselves. We want them to do careers that they love and believe that they can make money in careers that they love. However, I think a lot of people are scared about raising kids who have no value for money, who are entitled, who are spoiled. Okay, so last Christmas we watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory a few times, the Gene Wilder one, the original good one, and it was really fascinating having that conversation with the kids about Veruca Salt, right? Because she's like, I want it now, Daddy. And having that conversation about how she couldn't even enjoy, like a piece of chocolate because she didn't need to. She had thousands of workers opening chocolate bars and just throwing them away just so she could have that golden ticket. And, it was an interesting conversation because we're like, oh, look how spoiled she is. She's very spoiled because she's like, I want it now, Daddy. And we do have a kid that's a little bit like that. She's like, I want it now. And we just kind of go, Veruca Salt. But again, it shows up those personality types, right? So if you were to look at from a money archetype point of view, we have one kid who definitely has that celebrity factor. She wants things that are very shiny. She won't just wear normal Target. Well, she just won't wear a normal t-shirt. She'll change clothes 50 times a day. And, I can see that is going to be a thing when she's a teenager. She won't be happy with just regular stuff. She'll want the fancy stuff. And that is not something that I've taught her, because that's not me necessarily, where I buy things that I like, but I don't really have very expensive tastes. This is something that's just innate from her. And if you have that celebrity archetype, it would have manifested at a very young age for you. And so you might have memories of people saying, well, nobody likes to show off, or, you're such a diva, or made fun of you for it. So I'm very careful not to make fun of her for it, because I don't want to force her into wearing an ugly thing that she thinks is ugly just to prove a point. I want her to understand that desire she has is absolutely valid. It's okay to want beautiful things. And so I can't necessarily buy her clothes without being there. Or I have to think, which one would she like? I bought her a pink Barbie jumpsuit with diamantes on it and stuff like that. Something I would never wear, and I wasn't allowed to as a kid, but I knew she would like it. But it's things like, well, which one do you want to wear? Instead of shaming her for that's who she is, right? But there's a fine line then in giving her everything that she wants. And that's where I'm trying to find that line. Willow, however, so she's my oldest daughter, she would spend so much money on craft supplies. Okay. And so for her, it's always about that instant gratification hit of something new, like a new notebook, new textures, new stickers, anything that's a craft thing. And because I can afford it, and because I think, oh, it's educational, I was getting to a point a little bit where I was spoiling her and just being like, yeah, cool, let's buy that thing. Oh, how fun, because you're creative, right? But realizing too, the lesson that I want to teach her is creativity can come from anywhere. So I'm like, well, what else have we got at home? You know, when people go, we've got that at home. I hated hearing that as a kid. I'm like, we've got notebooks at home. But she's like, but not this notebook. And I'm like, oh, I totally get it. So some of that is when we're at home, giving her that instant gratification hit of like, oh my God, we haven't seen this for a while. Oh, how exciting is this? Oh, look at this. And like, oh, let's get out that craft and let's do it together. So she doesn't just get the gratification from newness, she gets the gratification from using what she has in her, and getting pleasure from it and the pleasure of finishing things. And I've been trying to role model that with, I've been doing cross stitch, and occasionally I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to finish this. I'm going to start a new one. And for them to see me going, oh, it's really hard, but I'm going to start on another little section of it, or I'm going to do a different color, and seeing them like, yes, see that in me, that I'm like, oh, I'm going to push through and finish it. And hey, why don't you finish that one? But that newness from shopping from your own closet is a lesson that romantics. And so that's what Willow is. She's that romantic personality that's all about pleasure and gratification. It's like, let's shop from what we already have and get that pleasure hit from using it, not just from buying it. And again, not shaming them for their desires. Now, George is a really interesting one because George, he's definitely got that maverick personality where he can be very like hates following rules and stuff like that. Money wise, I haven't quite figured him out. I think he's going to be I think he might have a little bit of frugality in there, but also he can be very, like, he can lose a lot of things, so he'll lose and break things quite often. Some of that is his ADHD, and he can be a little bit clumsy, but also just like forgetting things and losing things. And that's a really tricky lesson for kids too, is like, how much do you fix things for them? Because when I was a kid, it's like if something broke, that was it. Like, you don't get it. And so I get that sometimes with kids where it's like, oh, you broke your iPad screen, tough luck, you don't have an iPad. But then I'm like, it's such a good tool for him for self-regulation. And selfishly, I want him to have that so he doesn't use my phone and get that all sticky. And so it's like, where do we find that line between entitlement and learning good, healthy money lessons? And to be honest, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out myself. You know, we've had that debate about like pocket money, allowance, what do we do? And so we were like, okay, let's just come up with something. Like, so from age 7, you get $1 per year per week. So it's like you're 7, you get $7 a week. And it goes up and up. And what I realize is even in that, because now it's digital, they get it on an app, it's still not very real for them. And like they'll say something like, well, they'll go, oh, can I have this notebook? And I go, no, we're not buying notebooks today. You've got $1 million at home. And she'll go, oh, I'll just use my pocket money then. And I go, what do I say to that? Because it's like, well, yeah, it's your money, but it's like, yeah, but save that money. And I said to her recently, she's only 10. I'm like, but you know what? If you save your money, you can buy a really cool car when you're 18. She was like, what? You can see her just going, why do I need a car? What do I need a car for? So I think, again, I'm not giving any answers here. I'm posing the question for all of us is, how do we do that? How much is too much too soon? But let me tell you something that I did recently. I've spoken quite a few times about how for years I wanted to live by the beach and built this amazing big beach house. And then we lived there for 3 years and then we sold it. And some of that was like, I just realized it was a very public, very busy beach, and it was a big glass modern house, beautiful. Like, we did a great job on it, but it was like living in a goldfish bowl, and it was just not how I wanted to live. And so when we decided where do we want to go next, part of it was this conversation about how do we want our kids to be raised? Do we want them to be the richest kids in town? Which doesn't mean we were, but visibly it kind of looked like that, right? I don't know, how much money other people had, but they were starting to notice that contrast. And it was like, they'd go to someone's house and there'd be a very normal, just like normal family house that most of us grew up in. And I remember like one of them was like, they only had 1 bathroom. And I was like going, what the heck, guys? Because the house that we built had like 6 bathrooms, and so they were used to just like, oh, I never have to wait. I never have to wait for something. And so I could see them like going, oh, how do people live? And I was very much like trying to say to them, just because we've got lots of money doesn't mean we're better than anyone else. And no one's better. No one's, everyone's houses are different. But I would notice too, we'd have play dates and kids would go, oh my God, like you live in a mansion. And we'd go, yeah, but like we're just normal people. And so it was starting to change dynamics. And we sent our kids to the local public school, not to the private school, where they probably would have been around wealthier kids. But for us, it was just like the value of we just wanted public education, right? And so when we were looking about where we wanted to live, this is the conversation we're having about how do we create just a nice, stable, middle class childhood for them, where they're not sticking out as being super wealthy. They're not like experiencing what I experienced of having that poverty. And for it just to be a stable place for them to develop who they are without the complication of that. And I don't know if this is making sense to anyone, but I heard John Bon Jovi talk about this on a podcast recently. John Bon Jovi, like the singer, he was saying that I can't believe exactly the words, right? He said, we built this big house in Malibu right on the beach, and we were keeping up with the Joneses, and we'll like after a couple of years, me and my wife, and they've been together since high school, went, we don't want this for our family. So they moved to New Jersey. And like, I'm sure they still have an amazing house, but for them, it was like, we don't want to live that life where we're always keeping up with the Joneses and always, like that's part of our personality is like how rich we are. And so that was a big consideration for us of where we wanted to live next. And we could have gone anywhere, we could have gone anywhere. We could have built another big fancy house. And we deliberately chose a suburb that is 5 minutes walk to school, a nice, like, again, public school with kids of all different incomes, all different family backgrounds. Not like, I'm not going to say I'm not going to pretend it's a super modest house, but it's not the fanciest house that I could build. It's like, we're thinking of it as our schoolhouse. Like, this is our safe nest. It's going to be nice. We're renovating it at the moment, but it's not going to be super fancy, flashy, big. And you might think that's a weird thing for a money mindset person to say, where you can have anything you want. And I want to deliberately choose that for this phase of their life, because I know how much those money experiences impact people. Okay. And what was starting to happen, not only, were they starting to see massive contrast between us and some of the other families, but they were like, Willow was like, they were being entitled. We went shopping and, Willow said, oh, can I have this thing? And I said, no. And she said, why not? You're a millionaire. And so I was like, oh, I can't say we can't afford it, because that's what I heard growing up, right? We can't afford it, can't afford it. And so that just shuts the conversation down. And she'd be like, well, why not? And I go, because we don't buy things all the time. Why not? Because it's not our value as a family to contribute to landfill or to buy things that we don't need, or, it's just not our value as a family. And having to then really solidify what are our values as a family. And, what do we spend our money on? Who are we as a family? What are our values? And for us, it's freedom, adventure, abundance, and joy. So they're our family values that all the kids know. And so I was like, oh, we don't have freedom because I'm working a lot because we have this big house to pay for. We don't have that freedom necessarily. It's still freedom compared to most people, don't get me wrong, but I still wanted that next level of freedom. Freedom, adventure. We weren't going on a lot of adventures as a family. So that's why we wanted to go traveling, and also to be like, oh, well, if we sell our big house because we made a big profit on it and be mortgage free, we'll have more bandwidth to go on adventures and to maybe spend more money on travel rather than the upkeep of a big house. Freedom, adventure, abundance. What does abundance feel like for us? And for me, it was realizing that wanting to like build investments to have long-term wealth, not necessarily earn lots of money and spend lots of money, which we weren't necessarily doing, but I could see how that new money stuff was coming into our life, where it was just like, oh, cool, we'll just spend it. And not having that thing of going, well, you know what? Like, while our kids are young, let's just live our life. But like later, let's go traveling and do lots of cool stuff, like thinking for the future. So that was that abundance for me of going, it's not just about what we can buy, but it's that, again, the freedom, and also like not having to go, oh, okay, let's do another big launch to pay for stuff. And then the joy. And that's, I think, where we were getting to a place where we needed to add more joy into our life. You know, working with your spouse, having a big multi-million-dollar business, it can have its own stresses, right? And I was definitely feeling the pressure of being that breadwinner, and, you know, the pressure to perform and provide and all of that kind of stuff. And also the pressure on Mark working with me. So we wanted to ease some of that pressure, not work together as much. And for us, that was that deliberate thing of going, okay, for our kids, we're going to make this change in our life. And it's been so joyful. I've loved like being a suburban mom. I don't know if this is the thing, I know I do get itchy feet. And so I know when we finish the renovations of the house, I'll probably sit there and go, maybe we build this instead. I know that about myself, but I also know that this is such like a good conversation for us of our values for our family. So I know I didn't give a lot of solutions. I just hoped I sparked off some conversations for you about, what are your family values? Are you living them? What are you saying about money? What things are you giving to your own kids? And like being mindful about those things, right? Of going, I don't have to be everything to them. I was like, I don't want my kids to be super, super wealthy. I don't need them to be super wealthy. I look at what I've achieved from growing up with a single mum on welfare, right? So I was like, if all I provide to them is a stable middle-class childhood and really encourage their passions and creativity, they don't need to inherit lots of money to do that. They don't. And actually, I've seen people who, like, that's not useful for them. I want them to be able to strive, but have that safety and comfort of going, I know mum and dad will always be there, but I've got the freedom to also experiment and play and be creative and make money because it's fun and because I want to. That's our desire for our kids. I would love to hear as well what things come up for you around kids and money, what questions you have. I'm not the expert. Like, you can say, oh, should I do pocket money? I don't know. All I know is like what has impacted people as kids can really impact their money mindset as grown-ups. So think about those things and aim for neutrality with money. Aim for neutrality. Okay, I've got one final thought for you after this last break. See you in a sec.
So I have done the Money Bootcamp, and I love there's so many things I could share, but one of the things I loved is the incremental upgrades and the idea that you're like, you start slow with the upgrades and it feels like it's going really slowly, and then all of a sudden it'll just be massive. And I just went, oh, okay, well, all right, let me do it. So the first thing I did was I got sunglasses, which I had a really beautiful pair of sunglasses like 8 years ago. And then one day I sat on them and I was like, that's it. Like, you're never getting any good sunglasses again. You don't deserve it because you just sat on this, and that's it. You're too responsible for it. So then I always had these crappy sunglasses, but I love sunglasses. So I got these sunglasses and I got 2 pairs. And actually the less expensive pair was an Anchor that I started having, because they're like rose gold and they just like make me feel like hot and like I got my shit together. And, I've got this selfie of myself where every time I'm feeling a bit like wobbly, I'll look at that and be like, yeah, okay. So, I upgraded that and like just did the course, and then literally within probably 6 to 12 months at the very most, I think it was less than that, we bought the apartment next door. We have done an entire renovation of the whole place within a year, and it was like it started so small and then it just went like these massive opportunities came up that would never have been there before. So that's been incredible, and really just also like as a female, it never occurred to me that it's not a common thing to be like not only a breadwinner, but like running a company. And I was just like, oh, this is just what you do. And then just realizing there are so many things that you face that are not only you, like whether it be the tax thing or whether it be, oh, I can't make more money than like the male figures in my family, and like, just doing all that work to like see what's in the way, the negative consequences, has made a really big difference with that. So yeah.
Okay, my final thought is that thing we used to say to kids, work hard and you'll achieve anything you want. And so what I tell my kids is, if you have a dream and you work towards it, I don't say work hard. I say, if you have a dream and you work towards it, then you can do anything that you want in your life. That's totally cool. And money's just money. It doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just, money is money. And again, if you really work on your own money mindset stuff, then your kids will be fine. They really will. Don't stress about it too much. Just work on those little things that you say. And what's really funny too is when kids start to Google you, and like when Willow Googled me, she's like, "Oh, you're a millionaire." And I'm like, "Yeah." But I want her to see too that, like, I'm just a normal human. Like, I'm not anything special. And we use our money to create good in the world and to help other people. That's it. And I think my very last tip is, if you can teach your kids anything, it's a practice of self-love and compassion. And that's why I love doing EFT with my kids, tapping, because I want them to learn that I deeply and completely love and accept myself. That's the only thing I actually really want to teach them. Everything else, their jobs will be different to ours. The way they make money will be different to the way we have. We can't really know and teach them all of those things, but we can teach them to love and accept themselves. And to forgive themselves for their mistakes. They'll figure out all the rest of the stuff. And then in the future, they can join probably one of my kids' money mindset programs. And then they can, talk about all the stuff that we did wrong for them. So compassion for ourselves is something to role model, really is. Okay, I can't wait to hear all your comments about this one. And of course, if you want to explore your money mindset, just come and join us in Money Bootcamp. It's denisedt.com/bootcamp. And come and join us for this month's live call. All right, I'll see you next week on another episode of Chill and Prosper. Bye.
Start your business for the freedom of time. Now you're tired of the hustle and grind. There's gotta be a better way. It's time to listen to Chill and Prosper. Welcome to Chill and Prosper. You're ready to chill and prosper with Denise Duffield-Thomas.